Charlie Kirk Show starts now.
His week of wins that he had last week were so extraordinary. You start Monday, he arranged a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. On Tuesday, he drives plans for NATO allies to ramp up their defense spending so that we don't have any more wars. On Wednesday, he confirms talks with Iran for next week. Thursday, all these companies, not with federal regulation, but just by talking about it, all of these private companies like Nestle joins a growing list of companies to implement the MAHA practices where they get rid of these artificial dyes. Friday, Supreme Court makes it far more difficult for these lower court judges to put in these injunctions that make the rest of the country suffer. And then on Saturday, he manages to get his big, beautiful bill passed through.
And don't forget, Charlie, the stock market hit a record high as well.
I found him to be incredibly savvy, actually, in how he answered that, Caddy, both for the reasons you said, but also because of clearly who he's talking to. He's trying to build a coalition, to use that word, a cohesiveness on the left. And he knows that the people he's trying to persuade that, look, I'm not your typical candidate, is in fact a population of people that do not see the ideological, or in this case, the verbal, the rhetorical purity test in the same way. That I think people who understandably, by the way, just want him to condemn it, right? I understand that completely, but Molly, he is playing a bit of chess here.
Mamdani has made comments that some have said veer towards anti-Semitism. His initial statement after October 7th, he criticized the Israeli government, but didn't criticize Hamas. He defended the use of the word globalize, or the phrase globalize intifada.
Globalizing the intifada, by way of example, is not an acceptable phrase, and he's going to have to clarify his position on that as he moves forward.
We need the federal government to pause the implementation of the digital services tax. The DST is a bipartisan consensus in Washington. They are absolutely furious at us. They're furious with Canada over even considering what they view as an unfair tax on American companies.
I'm going to quote it for folks, is to shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer boroughs to more expensive homes in richer and whiter neighborhoods. Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed. We've seen time and again that this is a property tax system that is inequitable.
And yet, by invoking race, do you run the risk of potentially alienating key constituents?
I think I'm just naming things as they are. And ultimately, the thing that motivates me in this is to create a system of fairness. It is not to work backwards from a racial assessment of neighborhoods or our city.
What do you tell the nearly 12 million people that are on the brink of losing access to Medicaid?
Well, no, again, that's not right. 1.4 million are illegal aliens. Then a huge percent of that are the able-bodied working people who will need to go back to work. So we're going to have a work requirement, and we'll go from there. We're just going back to the levels pre-COVID.
They said Gen Z would stay silent, that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight. Charlie Kirk, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, Laura Ingraham, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, Tom Homan, Congressman Byron Donalds, Russell Brand, Savannah Chrisley. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. Register now at SAS2025.com.
Every day, there's a battle for your mind raging. Information coming from every angle with the will to deceive. Fear not. You found the place for truth. The voice of a generation that still has the will to believe in the greatest country in the history of the world. This is the Charlie Kirk Show. Buckle up. Here we go.
Okay, everybody, radio stations across the country here in the mobile Bitcoin.com studio. I have my Louisville Slugger here. Do you see that? It will be very helpful around the office. It will be here to help. You see, Andrew never heard of the phrase, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Andrew never heard that. It'll be good for self-defense. I'll tell you, I went to the Louisville Slugger factory this weekend. That's strong stuff. I was disappointed to hear that only 17% of Major League Baseball still use a Louisville Slugger. That means that there's something not right about that. That means their product hasn't kept up. However, this is very beautiful. Very beautiful. I'm here in Louisville. I was here for my aunt's memorial. It's just a terrible situation. She passed away back in January, but we had her memorial this weekend. And this morning we had an incredible event for Nate Morris, who is running for the U.S. Senate to replace the McConnell Mafia. And McConnell is one of the worst U.S. senators. He's been a disaster, and Nate Morris is going to do a phenomenal job replacing him in Kentucky. We had an amazing event. We'll talk about that. But breaking news over the weekend, it was reported that the Big Beautiful Bill passed, but it didn't actually pass. The Big Beautiful Bill passed quorum. So the Senate has all these goofy rules where you have to go through these parliamentarian procedures, and you have basically a voterama. So there are several steps to do this. Number one, you have to do a procedural vote. You have to read the entire bill on the floor. You have up to 20 hours of debate, then a voterama on amendments. And the amendments are going to be out of control. They are going to be just the most goofy things you could possibly imagine. I want to have a pigeon factory in Wyoming. I want to have an estuary for deer in Tennessee. Every possible giveaway you can imagine. And then they return the bill to pass the House. Now, the House has to be agreeable to all this. This cloture vote is what gets highlighted a lot, because when a bill is getting filibustered, this is the vote it has to clear to not be filibustered. So this is the key. This is the fundamental vote, and it has passed a major hurdle. However, Elizabeth McDonough, that we talked about last week, she was up to her games this last weekend. So here's the Big Beautiful Bill as it stands. So the remittance tax was 3%, which is a huge part of the Big Beautiful Bill, which taxes money from America to Mexico and puts a tax on basically illegal immigration. Now, some people will say, well, it weakens the U.S. dollar. That's a fair point. I think it's worth the cost to say that we are going to make a firm stand against the idea that you can come to this country, you can come here illegally, take money, and send it back to your home country. So the Senate has reduced the remittance tax from 3% to 1%. The House raised the debt ceiling up to $4 trillion. The Senate went up to $5 trillion. The child tax credit went from $2,500 per kid down to $2,200 per kid. The SALT deduction cap, honestly, this was the best thing the Senate did over the weekend. I think SALT is a total scam, and SALT is basically a subsidy of blue states. SALT is state and local tax deductions. A lot of people from California and New York are going to be emailing us because they're big fans of SALT. SALT allows states that are dysfunctional with big pension funds, with unregulated teacher unions, to be able to have these proven failure of policies over periods of time continue. And so this went from a $40,000 permanent SALT deduction in the House to a $10,000 temporary SALT deduction. Now, whether or not we're still going to get Mike Lawler and the SALT caucus to vote for this in the House, that remains to be seen. The senior tax deduction went from $4,000 up to $6,000. Now, here are some of the things that were removed by the Senate Parliamentarian. Some of this is goofy, but honestly, some of this is really important. The defunding of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau removed from the Parliamentarian. $1.4 billion in pay cuts to the Federal Reserve staff. How is that not budgetary? Can someone explain to me how that is not reconciliation, how that is not spending? What is she judging this based on out of? The elimination of the Office of Financial Research, she's keeping that. Notice I'm saying she's keeping as if she's some sort of office holder. That like she's in charge of the legislative agenda of President Trump. So she is literally calling these shots. Now the Senate can override them. I think they should entertain that. The acceleration of Medicaid provider tax cuts? Nope. The dissolution of Public Company Accounting Oversight Board? Nope. The Crenshaw Amendment, which is banning gender-affirming care under Medicaid, that is staying. The restrictions of non-citizens immigrant health care coverage. Now, I think that actually got figured out in some sort of wording, but a ban on illegals getting food stamps, that remains. A repeal of the EPA 2026 vehicle emissions is removed. Mandate for USPS to sell electric vehicles, that got removed. Removal of a silencer regulation under the NFA, that got removed. That one I can understand. That's hardly budgetary. An expansion of Pell Grants for short-term workforce, that got removed. But here are the major wins that got kept. And look, the Parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, she just went through and she took like a bat like this and she said, nope, 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 nope. And that is Elizabeth McDonough right there, who basically was just calling shots over this entire bill. The Senate can decide to overrule Elizabeth McDonough. Let me be clear. A unelected Senate staffer should not be mentioned on the Charlie Kirk show, ever. That should be just a rule. On national radio, on our program, we should not be spending time about Elizabeth McDonough. I bet she has great table manners. I bet she's very charitable. I bet she's a wonderful person. She's a Harry Reid appointee. She's helped Democrats. She's helped Republicans before, stopped down big legislation. But at this point, the fact that we are even talking about Elizabeth McDonough as if she's some sort of power source in the Senate, no one voted for her. She was not even Senate confirmed. It's like this weird workaround. She is gumming up the works, and the Senate can override her. And let me tell you, the Senate should not override. The silencer thing, obviously, I care about that. I'm super pro Second Amendment, but that's a reach. That shouldn't have been in the bill. I get that. But this is what should be in there. Ban food stamps for illegal immigrants? Yes. Override McDonough on banning SNAP benefits for undocumented immigrants, or they say undocumented, for illegals. That is worth the fight. If you want to talk about a place where it's willing to cast away Senate decorum, and we have Mark Wayne Mullen, I'm going to ask him this question directly, that when if we are giving food stamps to illegals, that is a great fight to pick to overrule the Senate Parliamentarian. And so the components that are kept in the bill are also significant. We keep the Trump tax cuts, $2,200 per child tax cut. We have deductible income for workers up to $25,000 in tip income, up to $12,500 in overtime income. We keep all the border stuff basically. It's funny, all the new spending, you could spend as much new money as you want in this process. McDonough's fine spending new money, but it's very hard to cut old spending. The bill hits hundreds of things, literally. Hopefully most are good. We're still reading the whole bill. The most key thing about this is that this is a means to deliver on Trump's campaign promise. And in America, people should be able to get what they voted for. We get 1,875 new ICE agents, 2,500 next year, $600 million from our recruiting and hiring support, $1 billion for military deployment in support of border operations, $46.5 billion for a physical border wall. Everybody, I want to take you back to 2016. You know that we could not get any funding or any approval from the U.S. Senate back in 2016, 2017, 2018 because of Mitch McConnell and John McCain for the border wall? We have $46 billion, everybody. The border wall is funded. I know that we don't talk about build the wall much anymore because we have other problems because they're in the wall. The enemy is in the gates, where back in 2016 they were still outside the gates. The enemy has come into the gates the last couple of years under Joe Biden, but the wall is fully funded. Unfortunately, the defense spending is still remaining $150 billion in new Department of Defense funding. I support our military. I think that we could probably be a little bit more cost efficient there, but it is what it is. So basically, we keep the tax cuts. We keep no tax on tips. We kept no tax on tips, right, Danny? Kept no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and we kept all the border stuff. That's a mandate bill. Now, we got to focus on this no food stamps for illegals, and they're working on the Medicaid stuff. The food stamps for illegals is worth overturning McDonough. We should not talk about Elizabeth McDonough on the show. No one should know who she is. She should just be a silent actor. She's a staffer. I have confidence they're going to figure this out. But the fact that we cannot restrict food stamp benefits for illegals because some technocrat Senate staffer says no, I don't know what form of government that is, but that's not a democracy. That's not a republic. Remember, she has exactly as much power as the Senate gives her. So they can change any rule by majority of vote, and I think it's time to override Elizabeth McDonough on that provision in particular. What do we have, guys? I want to tell you guys about Z-Factor. If you guys want to get a better sleep, Z-Factor goes beyond melatonin. Z-Factor uses a combination of 4 natural ingredients to help relax your mind so you fall asleep quicker. And once you're asleep, it helps you stay asleep. 100% drug-free, no groggy feeling when you wake up. And Z-Factor was developed by Relief Factor, so you can count on the science behind it. Right now, pay only $19.95 for a 30-day supply, a 46% savings. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF. Go to relieffactor.com. I'm enjoying my new Louisville Slugger. Live from Kentucky. We'll be right back.
Newsflash, Democrats. America is a republic, not a democracy. Fact check. True.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. I want to tell you guys about YRefi. They have been phenomenal partners of this program. In fact, YRefi helps make this program possible, and they help our campus tour, which is unbelievably viral, billions and billions of views. So thank you for all of you that watch our campus tours. Also, YRefi helps our Young Women's Leadership Summit, our Student Action Summit. I just toured the YRefi offices. Phenomenal people, really great people. They're working really hard. I think the world of them. Go to whyrefi.com. Private student loan debt in America totals about $300 billion. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed. They provide a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Go to whyrefi.com. Because of private student loan debt, so many Americans feel stuck and helpless, and they've even lost hope. Whyrefi gives you a light at the end of the tunnel. Go to whyrefi.com. If you go to whyrefi.com, you can read the testimonials from other people who have been where you are. Do you have a co-borrower? Well, Whyrefi can get them released from the loan. You can give mom or dad a break. You can even skip a payment every 6 months, up to 12 times without penalty. Go to whyrefi.com. That is YREFY.com. Whyrefi.com. Email me. I want to hear from you. freedom@charliekirk.com. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen joins us in a second. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Joining us now is Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from the great state of Oklahoma. Senator, thank you for taking the time here. You are the official liaison between the House and the Senate. So part of this process is passing stuff that we know the House can pass, and some of the stuff got cut out by the Parliamentarian. So, Senator, I have a two-part question. Number one, please give us the update. But number two, can you please explain to us, is there any way that we can get, like, the no food stamps for illegals back in the bill, even though the Parliamentarian struck it down? Senator.
Yeah, first of all, sorry about the shot. We are running on and off the floor, so I'm stuck down in the basement trying to make this work off of iPhone. So where we're at with the bill, we're going through this Voterama. We'll probably finish up late tonight. I would say just because the dog and pony show, the Democrats want to show that they're fighting, which is just like a spoiled child. So they're probably going to go through the primetime shows. Sometimes after the primetime shows go off the air, they'll probably quit their fight around 11 o'clock Eastern time or so. As far as the Parliamentarian kicking this stuff out, keep in mind the Byrd Rule, which the Byrd Rule exists to allow us to do reconciliation. Without the Byrd Rule, you can't do reconciliation because all appropriation bills require 60 votes in the Senate, not just a simple majority. And the Byrd Rule specifically requires you to only deal with mandatory spending, not discretionary spending. Discretionary is what we do through the appropriation process. Mandatory spending's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We can't touch Social Security, and it has to deal with taxes. No policy. So what she ruled on the food stamp issue was that should go into the appropriation bills, such as the Farm Bill, and the only way to override her is it takes 60 votes. So we can still put the amendment in. Every Republican can vote for it, but we need 6 Democrats to vote with us to be able to override the Parliamentarian on that. There are some amendments that are moving forward to try to override her, but we won't get a single Democrat to support this.
Right. So, but just two questions on that. So you cannot override the Parliamentarian on simple majority vote. Is that right?
No. Not on this. If it was outside of reconciliation, there are some cases to which you can, but because reconciliation exists only for a funding policy procedure through Byrd Rule, you can't. It's very specific, and keep in mind the House doesn't have to deal with Parliamentarian Byrd rules. We do in the Senate because the House can always operate off simple majority. So the Byrd Rule made it possible to do a funding bill by a simple majority in both houses.
But and correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, but can't reconciliation rules be changed by majority vote?
You can change the rules, but that also takes 60 votes. So it's a way. Keep in mind the Senate was designed for the purpose of the majority rules. Or the House was. The Senate was designed to slow down and give the minority a voice. That was the way our founding fathers set it up. You know this as good as anybody does. So there's certain rules that are in place, and they've been in place forever. And in order to change those rules, the majority can't simply override the minority in this. It will take 60 votes. In some cases, it actually takes 2/3. And it's frustrating as heck. Listen, as a former House member, Charlie, I used to get as mad as anybody about it. Just override them. Just override them. Yes, you can override them. You can also, now the leader can remove the Parliamentarian, but in this case, is it one of those questions that you should remove the parliamentarian over? Now, keep in mind that same parliamentarian kept Bernie Sanders from being able to put the minimum wage increase when Biden did reconciliation. This same parliamentarian also kept Bernie Sanders
I know that.
from doing amnesty.
No, we've been very I think you're right. No, you're right. We've been fair on McDonough, but right now I think she's out of control. But Senator, we have a minute here, and thank you for being generous with your time. But there is a nuclear option. I just want to make sure I'm clear with the audience. You can go nuclear, right? Which I think is like Rule 5, where we did with Supreme Court justice. I'm not even saying we should do it. I know that people will lose their mind. But if we're saying that we can't all of a sudden, we have to keep on giving food stamps to illegal aliens, I mean, come on, that's a fight I think that is worth happening.
Yeah. Well, we can change it through the appropriations through discretionary spending. What the parliamentarian ruled is this isn't mandatory spending, meaning that Congress doesn't have to automatically spend the money, which she's absolutely correct on that. But when we do discretionary spending through the appropriation process, that's one of the 12 bills. She's saying that's where that belongs, and you can have that fight then. When we do the appropriation process, you can go nuclear on some of that stuff and change it from majority to minority, but not through the whole appropriation bill. Because as I repeat myself here, the Senate was designed to give the minority a voice, which is why we were able to keep so much stuff when Nancy Pelosi was ruling the House, is why we were able to keep so much stuff from moving forward, even though at that time we had Harry Reid running the Senate.
No, that is correct. I respect that. No, trust me, I do respect. And Senator, please stay for another segment. And I'm expressing my frustration and the audience's frustration because it seems arbitrary. And I don't think we should be in the business of defending every decision of an unelected Senate staffer. I'm with you. She was helpful with some of the Bernie stuff, but some of this seems so outrageous. So stay right there. We'll be right back with Senator Mark Wayne Mullen.
days away from what's been dubbed the real reset. It's the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, which include Russia, China, India, Iran, and many more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering its value. They've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. So how can you protect your IRA or your 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? Well, you may want to consider diversifying with gold from the Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. So get a free information kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs simply by texting the word America to the number 989898. July 6 marks a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings simply by texting the word America to the number 989898 and claiming your free information kit on gold. And all of this comes from the Birch Gold Group. Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice news break. A Senate vote on President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill is expected to happen as soon as today or potentially early tomorrow morning, following a marathon weekend of debate. Senate Republicans find themselves not only debating Democrats in the chamber, but also pushing back against the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the Senate's version of the Big Beautiful Bill will add an estimated $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. The CBO's score, by the way, is about $800 billion more than the bill the House sent to the Senate. President Trump also out with a message to Senate Republicans who may be considering a no vote because of the bill's price tag. Taking to Truth Social, he writes, "For all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We will make it all up times 10 with growth more than ever before." President Trump's Energy Secretary Chris Wright, by the way, also taken to the airwaves over the weekend, rallying support for the spending bill. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis appear to be no votes on the issue at this point.
American made. And darn proud of it. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, continuing with us is Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. Senator, thank you for the time. I know that you're in between the voting right now, and it's kind of chaotic. So, Senator, just humor me, and I know you're doing a great job, and this is the audience's frustration directed towards the system and the compromising of the mandate. But let's say we did remove the parliamentarian with someone that would be more sympathetic, that would be more fair-minded. If we can't do it just via rule, what would that look like? What would happen? With some of your other colleagues potentially erupt in anger? Has it ever happened before? Please walk us through that scenario.
Well, technically, I'm thinking here. Technically, you could do it, but you're not guaranteed that the next parliamentarian is going to be any better because they have to interpret what the Byrd rule is. It's kind of like a judge is supposed to interpret the Constitution, but it's funny that you get, a 6-3 decision all the time out of the court. I mean, either it's constitutional or it's not. I know that's your frustration too, but so you're not guaranteed to get a different outcome from a different parliamentarian. You can just do the best you can. However, if you did do it, the leader could fire the person. It could trigger a vote, and I would say you would have at least 10 Republicans that would vote with the Democrats to probably override the leader on that, unless it was for a legal purpose or a job performing purpose, meaning job performing, like she didn't show up to work or something like that. That would be grounds of firing. That'd be the only reason why we wouldn't have to the vote couldn't be called to override the leader.
Got it. Yeah, so that's not shocking to me. It's disappointing. I think it's rather pathetic, but it's not disappointing. And I want to get to some of the wins. I don't want to stay in the negative, but I have to. I represent the audience. The audience is on top of this issue. Just to make sure I understand, we have to now live with the parliamentarian. Is there any way to change the wording, because even from people that were once sympathetic to the Parliamentarian, I've been getting messages from members, from the administration, and also in the Senate. They think she is reaching way too far here. It's incredibly arbitrary. There's no board, there's no council, there's no committee. It's just her mind that gets in the way of 75 million people that voted. Something seems really imbalanced there. So is there any way to try to compromise with her? Can you meet with her? Can you negotiate? What's the process here? Is it like you submit your homework and the teacher grades it? Like, walk us through some of the sausage making here.
Charlie, actually, that's a good example. You can submit your homework. Teacher grades it, except for the Parliamentarian. She doesn't just exit out. She will exit out, and then you can meet with her and say, how can I change this to get my grade better? She's she's one of those individuals that will let you do that. So what she'll do is she'll work with the language, explain what your ruling is. I stopped good, by the way. But she will allow you to change your wording if it's possible. But if it's ruled that this funding specifically is in discretionary spending zone, which is where the SNAP program for the most part is. It's in the Farm Bill, which is discretionary spending. Then it's hard to actually move that into mandatory, because you'd have to draw mandatory that it's inside Medicaid or Medicare. And that doesn't fall inside Medicare or Medicaid, the SNAP program. So that's a little more difficult to do. On some of the other programs that she's kicked out, we was able to go in and rewrite them. She will help us with some of the language to write it, to make it within the Byrd rule. The problem when you do that, sometimes it changes what your objective is, because during the Byrd rule, it has to do with revenue only. It can't do with policy. So anything that does with policy can't be in there. Revenue. So taxes or increasing or decreasing mandatory spending. That's a very, very narrow window we have to fight in.
Yeah. So just something to think about to bring back to your conference. I think you got... No, please finish your thought.
I was going to say, I get this is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to me. And the rules in the Senate are so old, so ridiculous, and need to be reworked. And the reason why they've never been reworked is because when you rework rules, a lot of cases it actually takes 2/3 of the Senate to actually agree. So just for instance, I know this is stupid. We can have water and milk on the floor, but you're not allowed to have coffee. I can go to the floor wearing a tie and a jacket and no shirt, but I have to have long pants on, and closed-toe shoes. And these rules have been there, I don't know, before I was there, and way before probably Chuck Grassley was there. And that you can't get them changed. It is the most frustrating thing you've ever seen.
All right, well, here's what we need. I want to get to the victories here. We got 4 minutes, then I got to let you go vote. We got to have the Trump rules. You're allowed Diet Coke. You have to wear a red tie if you're a Republican. And how about we fix this whole parliamentarian thing? Just bring it back to your conference. You can say, I was just on the Charlie Kirk show. We had a polite conversation. Let me tell you, people are pissed. And that we had this wonderful election, we worked so hard, and then some unelected Senate staffer can just say, no, especially food stamps are illegal. So I think you guys should consider termination. Trent Lott did it in 2001. I know there was retribution from that, but we are in special times. Now, with that being said, we'll just put a capstone on that. Senator, go back to your conference and do that. We're going to socialize this. And you've been a good sport with all this. I know you have to interpret all this. Talk about the wins. 4 minutes uninterrupted, Senator. What are the wins we got out of this? Because it's not all bad. In fact, it's overwhelmingly good. It's more than 80% of the pie. Senator, please.
Well, we're making tax cuts permanent. We're securing the border. You talked about that previously. We're defending our country by plussing up the DOD. We're making sure that we're energy independent, and at the same time, we're boosting take-home pay to the average household of four. Their take-home pay this year, compared to last year, will be $10,000 higher. We're locking in the economic policies for Trump. We're cutting $1.6 trillion in deficit, which is the largest deficit reduction in any Congress or in the history of Congress, which is massive. And there's a lie out there being told too, Charlie. There's a lie that the Democrats are spreading, that a lot of the media has picked up, that we're adding $3.3 trillion in deficit. That's a lie. And what they're lying about is the CBO scored this bill two ways. One, they scored it with saying, hey, let the taxes expire. This is what the Democrats said. If we let the taxes expire that we're currently operating on, which is called current policy, what's the deficit on that? Well, since the tax, if we let them expire, it's $4 trillion plus to the Washington, D.C. bureaucrats to spend. If we allowed it to expire, the CBO said, well, then you have a $3.3 trillion deficit. But if you let current policy, which is the current taxes that we're currently in, continue to move forward, it actually is a $507 billion surplus. So we're not, it's all about numbers, and it's ridiculous numbers, but the media and the left is spreading the lie by saying this is a $3.3 trillion deficit increase.
Right. And again, the supercharging of the economy is underrated here. It's about growth, border. And so, Senator, last question. What is a Voterama, and what amendments do you anticipate being added to the bill? Anything, and does that also have to go through a bird bath too, is the amendment? So really quick, about a minute remaining on those two elements.
Yeah, so any amendment has to go through the bird bath. The parliamentarian will rule if it's within the bird rule or if it's out. If it's out, it's 60 votes. If it's in, it's 51. Voterama means that we vote as long as people can last, which, you know, Chuck Schumer's pretty old. Leader Thune's pretty fit. I think the Republicans can outlast the Democrats on this one. They can put any amendment forward. There's nothing that stops anybody from putting any amendment on the floor, and it's as many as you can get in until you can't keep your eyes open anymore. And it's one of these crazy rules that once again the Senate has. As far as getting in there, Rick Scott's got a provision that could possibly change the FMAPs back, and it'd give you 5 years. What it does is it goes at some of the Medicare expansion that happened underneath Obamacare. It brings it back in and makes you focus specifically on the areas that are needed the most, meaning that we have 35 million people inside the United States that live underneath the poverty line. Over 70 million are signed up for Medicaid. Those numbers don't work. Why do we have so many people gaming the system? It's because of the FMAPs, and so that's one amendment that could help, and it would decrease the deficit, secure Medicaid for those that need it the most, and make sure that people that are on there deserve it, not people that are on there because they're too lazy to work.
Senator, you got to go vote. Thanks for your time. And deliver that message back to your conference. Do not dismiss the idea of firing her. Do not dismiss it.
And
Thank you so much.
Senator,
Appreciate it.
And red ties.
And Diet Coke. Both of those together. That's right. Yes, sir. That's right. See you soon. Look, here's the takeaway. And I wanted to have that. I wanted to get all the facts out there for you, the audience, because your information is power for you guys. Knowledge is ammunition. The lesson is this. The person who rules you is the person you let rule you. And right now, the U.S. Senate, they have to start to think a little bit more creatively. They only have a majority because you guys gave them a majority. And if you got to go nuclear, you got to change some rules. By the way, the July 4th deadline that President Trump said, hey, I want it by July 4th, that's a self-imposed deadline. If it has to go another week to have a rule vote, here's what I've learned about the Senate. And I like Mark Wayne Mullen. We don't agree on everything, but he's a wrestler. He has energy, unlike some of these other senators that have just no spunk, no spirit. At least he'll talk. You can get answers out of him. I'll tell you, so many of these senators, they just don't want to work. You know what the Senate schedule is under regular order? I kid you not. You arrive Tuesday early afternoon and you leave Thursday afternoon. That is their work schedule. Tuesday evening, all day Wednesday, Thursday till afternoon, they fly back to wherever they want to go. They go to Florida, they go back to their constituency. It's literally 2.5 days of work. And you guys can, you have this whole conversation where you have to debate, we have to work weekends. I'm sorry, a lot of people in this audience, they are EMTs, they are nurses, they work Christmas, they work weekends. The Congress is like an unheard of concept to work holidays and weekends. They're above that. They're the ruling class. Don't you understand? They need their Christmas break. Remember we did that whole show back in November, December, of how much of our national debt and our public policy is hinged on the most expensive Christmas vacation ever? The most expensive Christmas vacation is they'll just decide to go spend a couple $1 trillion because they're tired. I want to go home on Christmas vacation. Republicans need to start playing hardball here. It's time for us to just throw it down and say, you know what? We won this election. The deep state is against us. The intel agencies are against us. We finally have cultural energy. We're not going to get in the way of our core promises. And our core promises are very simple, which is illegals should not be getting food stamps. Hold on a second. They are foreigners in our country receiving government benefits so they can go get SNAP benefits and EBT cards. We're not going to put up that is a red line. You want to talk about a red line? I'll draw it with my Louisville Slugger. That is a red line, okay? It's a red line, very simple. We're not going to put up with that. And you got to fire the parliamentarian fine. Let a bunch of people scream. But no, you might have missed it. Mark Wayne Mullen told you. That's why I really wanted to have that conversation respectfully. Let's try to flush it out. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's try to figure it out. He said, well, 10 Republicans would side with Democrats and they would just lose their mind. Now we have the core problem. Now we have revealed the issue. The issue is in front of us. It's that 10 Republicans are holding the entire conference hostage because they're more sympathetic to the Democrat cause than the Republican cause. And look, we got some we got some benefits on, I'm going to read some of this. We got some SNAP eligibility. But it's still, the idea that illegals are going to keep on getting food stamps, that should be verboten. We shouldn't put up with it. I want to tell you about Alan Jackson Ministries. Alan Jackson is an amazing man, a friend and mentor of mine. He has a great new book you want to read called God Bless America Again. It tells the truth about our history, how our nation was formed on biblical principles, and the importance of protecting our Judeo-Christian foundations as we move forward. God has given us an assignment to bring our faith into our world today. Here's the catch. It starts with focusing on our own attitudes. When you take time to understand how God has consistently blessed America, pouring his grace and mercy on us over and over again, it will give you hope for the days ahead. We cannot afford to forget our past, good or bad, or we will forfeit the best opportunities of our future. God Bless America Again will sharpen your perspective on what it means to bring God truth into our nation today. Go to alanjackson.com/Charlie. That is alanjackson.com/Charlie. alanjackson.com/Charlie. Great friend, great mentor. I love Alan Jackson Ministries. So take a look at it right now. alanjackson.com/Charlie for his latest book, God Bless America Again. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the future of America, and the future is bright. Here is Charlie Kirk.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. That is the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. We have the amazing Student Action Summit coming up literally in a week and a half. Can you believe it? It's going to be an amazing event. We're so excited about the crowds and the energy and the enthusiasm. We have Christy Noem. We have Tucker Carlson. We have Pete Hegseth. We have the biggest speakers in the movement. Let's play it. Let's play Cut 51.
They said Gen Z would stay silent, that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025. featuring the boldest voices in the fight. Charlie Kirk, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, Laura Ingraham, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, Tom Homan, Congressman Byron Donalds, Russell Brand, Savannah Chrisley. Join thousands of students, future leaders.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. I do have a make good because we had Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. What did we have? We had... Patriot Mobile. Let me tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is an amazing partner of the show. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. You've heard me talk about Patriot Mobile for a while now. You probably know that for years they stood in the gap for every American that believes in faith, family, and freedom worth fighting for. But did you know they have cutting-edge technology as well? Switching is easy. No store visits, no hassle. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team can activate you in minutes right over the phone. And get this, Patriot Mobile is one of the few carriers with access to all three major U.S. networks. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie or call 972-PATRIOT. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. So take a look at it right now, patriotmobile.com/Charlie. I think you'll check it out right now, patriotmobile.com/Charlie. This is full circle. Full circle as to why I'm here with my Louisville Slugger. Why am I here? The fact that there are 10 Republicans, listen, 10 Republicans that would go vote if we fire the parliamentarian is exactly why I'm here in Kentucky. Mitch McConnell is resigning, and he's not seeking re-election. Here is a real pickup opportunity to have someone that would not be one of those 10. One of my life's missions at Turning Point Action and our advocacy here on the Charlie Kirk Show is make that 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. It's, are you in the Republican Party to win? Are you here to use power for the good of the country, or are you here to protect some sort of antiquated ancestral institution where you can't have water and milk on the Senate floor? And what does that even mean? Democrats play to win. You got Letitia James out there who's trying to put Donald Trump in prison for 700 years, taking his business empire away from him. I'm not even recommending that. You have Fannie Willis. You had Alvin Bragg. You had Jack Smith. They went after us with everything they had. Now, part of that, resulted in a backlash, so you got to be a little bit careful with that stuff. But at least it shows that they were playing to win, and they ended up losing big time. The Republican Senate is at a crossroads right now. Where even unelected Senate staffers, I got to just, and I'm going to call Mark Wayne Mullen after this. I'm going to call a couple senators. I say, guys, just slow down a second. Do you hear yourself? You're saying, well, she won't allow this. And what? She won't allow? What are you talking about? She won't allow. She works for you. I mean, one thing if she was some sort of, constitutional provision that our founders put in. Senate parliamentarian is not in the U.S. Constitution. It's like handed down from parts of Article 1. It's read into there. Obviously, it's constitutional, but it's not explicitly in the Constitution. Do you hear yourself? Oh, she's not going to allow this. And I have full respect for a lot of the guests that have on the program that needless to say, but hold on, back up. You know who should be calling the shots? The American people call the shots. That's the system we have here. We don't have an oligarchy. Who voted for her? Now, getting mad at the parliamentarian is totally understandable. But the key is this, and that's where I want to now bring you to the next level. Technically, she has no power. So in some ways, the senators, they want you to be mad at the parliamentarian, and here's the game. Some of the senators want you to get really angry at the parliamentarian because, in essence, she has no power. The senators have the power. She is a veneer. She is a very helpful punching bag. So getting mad at the parliamentarians like, rah! Okay, it's a shield. Who has propped up the shield? Who has funded the shield? Who has voted for the shield? Everything that happens because senators want it to happen. Period. End of story. And you can go nuclear. I know that people might not like it. People might get upset. Oh, my goodness. Have we learned anything? All the hysteria from the left is largely unfounded. The world's going to end because of climate change. The world is going to end because Trump is leading us to a war with Iran. All that stuff was nonsense. It was garbage. All of the rules of the Senate, the parliamentarian, the filibuster, the indefinite holds, the glacial pace, they all protect the senators from having to deliver on their promises. And they have endless excuses for inaction. Endless. And a lot of these guys are my friends. And I think they're on board with me, by the way. I think that the old crows, I think Mitch McConnell and the old crow demo, we can't upset the apple cart. I'm sorry, the American people voted for that in November. So it's either we have an oligarchy of a philosopher king ruling class that is entrenched over all of us that calls the shots, or the American people are in charge. Which is it? Do you notice how many old institutions get the way of President Trump? The deep state, the administrative state, the courts got the way of Donald Trump, and now the U.S. Senate is getting in the way of the people. It's as if there are all these places that have been built to fortify the defenses against the will of the people, and that's unhealthy and that's wrong. And that's exactly what brought me to Kentucky, to endorse Nate Morris to try to then replace Mitch McConnell. Because if we don't actually start replacing in Republican primaries and act that the divide is not Republican-Democrat, that's part of the divide. The divide is oligarchy versus representative government. It is citizen versus oligarch. And the U.S. Senate should say, you know what, enough, thank you. We don't work for you, Miss McDonough. We're changing the rules, and we're going to make sure illegals don't get public benefits. Second hour coming up.
America's Voice family.
Are you on Gettr yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored, and it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Gettr app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Gettr.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Gettr.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Gettr chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Gettr friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth, and we're doing it on Gettr
every single day.
So don't wait. Download the Gettr app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community.
back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. We appreciate you being here with us. Retirement age is trending up these days. According to Boston College's Center for Retirement Research, the state of your health can mean the difference between retirement that you'll enjoy or one that leaves you disappointed. And that's where the folks over at Energized Health can come in.
So we decided that it was time for us. I'm about to retire. I wanted to be healthy and enjoy my retirement rather than be tired all the time, lethargic. I do have more energy that lasts longer. I'm sleeping much better, and I have a cervical issue that's affecting my arms, and that has subsided.
I have PTSD and have been suffering from night terrors up until a week into the protocol.
So awesome.
That's life-changing.
Thank you for being brave and courageous and authentic to share that.
John Jubilee joining me again to talk more about retirement and helping you make the best of it. John, I'm curious what kinds of regrets you see when you talk to people and how they're kind of delaying retirement because of their health, if you will.
Well, Terrence, it's an extraordinary phenomenon all across America, is that so many people they save and they're focused on their 401k. And then the next thing you know, Terrence, we hear these stories of, two friends retired during the same week. And then one guy dropped dead on the 14th hole of the golf course, the same week he retired. And then the other guy says, I don't want that to happen to me, and he comes in. The average age, Terrence, people typically will die 7 to 8 years after retirement. I mean, the statistics are staggering, and they will live such a low quality of life. And so one of our joys at Energized Health is we have people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, that are out there playing with their grandkids. They're picking up pickleball. They're doing things, Terrence, they never dreamed they'd be doing, running half marathons. That's how you want to retire. When you retire, you want to enjoy your life. You don't want to be just suffering and staying alive.
And John, I often have joked with you that Energized Health is the fountain of youth, but that really is part of it, particularly in this conversation about retirement. This is a way to renew some of those internal organs and give you a longer lease on life, if you will.
Well, 1,000%. And Terrence, I'm 65 years old this year. That's
stop reminding me, John. You look good. Stop reminding me.
Hey, but I'm telling you what, Terrence, it's so fun. I got twin 11-year-olds, 6 boys, 2 girls, but my youngest are twin 11-year-olds, and I'm still out there playing football and baseball and basketball and swimming and throwing them around the pool, and that's what I want for everyone, Terrence. I want people to have joy and fulfillment in their life, so that all that hard work that they did, what good does it do you if you got a big 401k? You can't go on vacation, you can't walk up a mountain, you can't go enjoy it. We want to encourage people at Energized Health, Terrence, that listen, your best years, your golden years can really be your golden years. They really can be your golden years. They can be the best, most energetic, most vibrant years of your life can be your retirement years.
And it's not about the bottom line. It's about the cellular level, getting down to the nitty gritty.
Well, it's all about that. We've got to get to the cellular level. And, one of the fantastic things, when we get healthy at the cellular level, then we're really healthy. And so a lot of people, Terrence, that get into retirement, they're on 2 or 3 or 4 medications. And you've heard the stories, Terrence. We have tens of thousands of clients. They get off their medication. They get 10 or 12 pounds of lean muscle mass. They gain back muscle like they had when they were in college. Their brain, their energy level is back to their college level in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, Terrence. And that's how we all want to retire, like that.
Absolutely. And if you'd like more information, folks, it's right there on your screen, energizedhealth.com. Log on, look over all the testimonials and see what they have to offer you. And you can also get in touch with John there. Well, that's going to do it for this Real America's Voice news break. As always, we appreciate having you along for the ride. And now let's get you back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I remain here in Kentucky. We had this amazing event with Nate Morris, who's running to replace Mitch McConnell. For hour 2 today, I have a fascinating conversation we filmed for you back in the Bitcoin.com studio with Jay Lasker, author of the Cramu Substack. Very interesting thinker, super smart guy. The full conversation will go up as a podcast at members.charliekirk.com. We get into a lot, but enjoy just a snippet of it and let me know what you think. free.charliekirk.com. Okay, everybody, you're going to love this conversation here with Cramu. Is that right? Welcome. And I think this is your first time on camera. I love reading your stuff online.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Just talk right in the mic. And you're super smart and brilliant. And so why don't you tell us what Cramu is, and then I want you to pick apart our supplement portfolio.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. All right, so Cramu, Adolphe Cramu, was a 19th century French jurist. He is actually known as the Abraham Lincoln of France. He is the person responsible for banning slavery in the French colonies. He was a classical liberal of sorts. He was also responsible for, very curiously, he somehow managed to maneuver something called the Cramu Decree, which is something I'm a big fan of. He allowed all the Jews in the French North African territories to get French citizenship and come to France. And I'm just very admirable guy, very funny guy. I feel like he lived up to a lot of his classical liberal principles and was a egalitarian in a good way, liked markets, liked all the things that make America great, like a big founding father.
Let me press pause. Are you okay with that name on there, Jordan, or not?
Oh, Jay is probably better.
Yeah, can we please restart, guys? So, Blake, thanks. Sir, I want to make sure I protect however you want to be presented. We're just going to restart.
Fast, and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app, and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAD anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available when...
Several years ago at a conference, I was pretty critical of some of the presentations there, and a VC came up to me and he said, "Do you think you can do better?" And I go, "Oh, of course I can." So I switched my field entirely over to working on that.
And so you have a lot of hot takes. So you're known as Cramu online.
Yep.
Who is Cramu?
So some people call him the Abraham Lincoln of France. He was responsible for a lot of sort of classical liberal initiatives, very much what you would see among a lot of the more progressive founding fathers, where he, for example, banned slavery in the French colonies. He did a really interesting thing where he gave the North African Jews the ability to get French citizenship and then come over to France. He emancipated a lot of people and did a lot of interesting things, very pro-market sort of guy, very pro-freedom in general, and just a wonderful historical character from the 19th century.
So we have a lot to discuss here. And by the way, I love reading your stuff online. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
It's provocative. It's contrarian. And so you are picking apart our supplement stuff here. So you are a bioinformatician. And so, for example, let's say someone's taking vitamin D. You think that it's probably either overrated or not necessary. Is that right?
Almost certainly overrated. Unless you have osteomalacia, unless you have brittle bones.
Oh, no.
Probably nothing is going to happen.
So, but people say it's good for mood.
They do.
Or depression. There's no correlation to that?
There are correlations, and that's the thing. There are tons of correlations.
Why is it not determinative? Causal?
That's the wonderful mystery. So we know that people who are healthy tend to have lots of vitamin D. They have high levels, and people who are unhealthy have low levels. But when you do a real trial where you give people more, or you watch people over time and really carefully and you monitor their levels, there's just no relationship between the levels and changes. There's no effect of the treatment. There's just really nothing there. And when you go really deep into it using genetic epidemiology methods for example, this thing called Mendelian randomization. This is a way that you can get causal information about how drugs work from genetic data. You see nothing. There's just nothing there. For the overwhelming majority of people, there's no effect. It's good that we fortify our food because, like, we can prevent osteomalacia, the weak bones, brittle bones and stuff. But otherwise, you're just not going to get much benefit.
Do you think does it help with serotonin production?
Maybe in the limit. That's the thing. If you go down to people who are very, very deficient, which is a very small minority, then yes.
So if you're like an old person in a home that hasn't seen the sun or has a restricted diet.
Yeah, you'll have to find people who are really weird in terms of, just relative to the general population. But for most people, you won't get any benefit.
Interesting. And so, and you say that because the studies don't bear out the conclusion, not necessarily there's a study that shows that there just hasn't been. Has there been long-term studies done on vitamin D?
Oh, yeah. There have been tons of studies. There are hundreds of trials on vitamin D, and they seems to just consistently show practically nothing. But there's a lot of hype because there are tons of studies showing these correlations going, oh, look, people with more vitamin D, they are healthier.
Do you think it's because they have healthier lifestyles and therefore it's the core? Yeah,
I think so.
So they're outside more. And is exercise something that you would say is good?
Absolutely.
Okay, so at least we agree on that.
Absolutely.
How about sun exposure?
Probably good. I mean, you need it. There's great data showing, I actually know a lot of people in the Bay who they get lamps in their homes to emulate the sunlight.
So is there studies about sun exposure?
There are, yeah.
Okay. So, but by getting sun exposure, you might get vitamin D, which might just be an effect of something else that is positive.
Yep. It could be something else that you're getting. Like people who live healthy lifestyles tend to have good vitamin D levels, but supplementing the vitamin D doesn't seem to do much of anything. So
fascinating.
It's kind of
not even for testosterone production.
Not really, no. If
you heard that before, I'm sure, though, right?
Oh, I've heard it tons. Yeah, it's funny. There are all these claims, and there's a lot of hype, a huge amount of hype. During COVID, for example, people were saying, oh, vitamin D is going to save you from COVID, and no, nothing
They
of
say
the
it
sort.
interrupts the cytokine storm or something. I'm going to get all the words.
Cytokine storms.
Yeah, sorry. I'm going to get it all screwed up, but yeah.
So, like, your immune system going into overdrive, they say it disrupts that. No, that's not preserved.
How about zinc?
Zinc is great. You need zinc. But if you supplement a bunch, I don't think you're going to get very much unless you're sick, in which case take it right as soon as you start feeling sick, and it might help a little bit. There is limited stuff on this, but there's still something. There's some indication. And it's not really going to hurt, so why not supplement it? It's also very cheap. So
yeah, and you can get zinc in meat. But I mean,
absolutely.
Steak, right?
You can get pretty much everything you need in meat.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily a vegan proponent?
No, not really. I am a big proponent of lab-grown meat. I advise a lab-grown meat company.
Really?
Yeah, and I like lab-grown meat and all that, and it's going to emulate meat, and I think it'll be great in a few years, but it's just not quite there yet. Like, it's very expensive, and the thing is, I want every vegan to start eating lab-grown meat the moment it's available because they have so many nutritional deficiencies.
Like omega-3s and CoQ10 and vitamin B.
Absolutely.
Are those the three major ones? No. Amongst many others, right?
Iron.
Iron is big.
They lack creatinine and creatine. They lack taurine, and they just lack seemingly everything.
So I was going to ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you are a believer in the amino acid benefits, right? So taurine, lysine, do those have potential benefits? Or would you get them in your standard diet?
You'll generally get them from your diet, yeah. And the thing is, if you have a good diet, you're very unlikely to be getting a lot from different supplements. There are limited exceptions. So I think actually a good heuristic is, do bodybuilders use it? And if the answer is, the biggest bodybuilders use it, then it probably is a good supplement. Like testosterone will help you build a lot of muscle.
Sure.
Creatine will genuinely help you put on muscle.
Creatine has cognitive benefits as well.
But especially for people who are vegans, vegetarians, who have restricted diets, because they lack that stuff and it seems to help them a lot. For people who have normal diets, normal omnivorous diets, they tend not to get very much benefit from creatine.
How about resveratrol?
No.
Why?
Oh, man, those studies just did not hold up. There was a fad for a long time in the anti-aging community. Goodness, there was even some fraud there. And
tell me more.
I don't really know too much about it because it's really before my time.
It's still hyped, though.
It is still hyped, which is baffling to me, but it's considered like one of those cautionary tales about hype nowadays.
I'll be right back with more from this interview. But first, I need to tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. I realize that there are many choices when it comes to who you choose for cell phone service, and there are new ones popping up all the time, but here's the truth. There's only one that boldly stands in the gap for every American that believes freedom is worth fighting for, and that is Patriot Mobile. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile's been on the front lines fighting for our God-given rights and freedoms, while also providing exceptional nationwide cell phone service with access to all three major networks. So don't just take my word for it. Ask the hundreds of thousands of Americans who've made the switch and are now supporting causes they believe in simply by joining Patriot Mobile. Switching is easier than ever. Activate in minutes from the comfort of your own home. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. America's all U.S.-based, Patriot Mobile's all U.S.-based customer service team is standing by to take care of you. Make the switch today at patriotmobile.com/Charlie. That is 972-PATRIOT, or go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Use promo code Charlie for a free month of service. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie, or call 972-PATRIOT and make the switch today.
And 4 years at a woke university. And it's free. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, now I need to tell you guys about our amazing partners at YRefi. That is YRefi.com. There's over $300 billion of privately held student loan debt. By the way, YRefi is an amazing partner of the program and also of our Young Women's Leadership Summit, which was a triumph of our Student Action Summit, of our campus tour. They are a primary partner here on the Charlie Kirk Show. YRefi, they help you guys get out of student loan debt. You can finally take control of your student loan situation with a plan that works for your monthly budget. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? Go to YRefi. whyrefi.com. Bad credit is accepted, and do you have a co-borrower? Whyrefi can get them released from the loan. You can give mom or dad a break. You can even skip a payment every 6 months, up to 12 times without penalty. Just call 888-WhyRefi34 or log on to whyrefi.com. That is whyrefi.com. May not be available in all 50 states. Whyrefi can reduce your monthly payment, and they do not care what your credit score is. Go to whyrefi.com. That is whyrefi.com to check it out today. That is whyrefi.com.
We're interrupting this program for a special live report.
We're interrupting your regularly scheduled programming to take you to the White House for the latest White House press briefing. Caroline Leavitt at the podium.
Have another busy week. On a scheduling note, tomorrow, President Trump will travel to the great state of Florida to attend the opening of a new illegal alien detention center located at Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport alongside Secretary Kristi Noem, Governor Ron DeSantis, Congressman Byron Donalds, and other state and local leaders. We hope to see many of you there. The facility is in the heart of the Everglades and will be informally known as Alligator Alcatraz. There is only one road leading in, and the only way out is a one-way flight. It is isolated and surrounded by dangerous wildlife and unforgiving terrain. The facility will have up to 5,000 beds to house, process, and deport criminal illegal aliens. This is an efficient and low-cost way to help carry out the largest mass deportation campaign in American history. We are truly coming off a historic week of President Trump racking up win after win on behalf of the American people. President Trump restored peace through strength and acted decisively as commander-in-chief to obliterate the immediate threat of the Iranian regime's nuclear capabilities and then brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, which continues to hold. Then, the president traveled to the Netherlands and achieved a monumental win for the United States and the NATO alliance by getting our allies to dedicate 5% of their GDPs to military spending. As a result of President Trump unleashing American energy dominance, summer gas prices are at the lowest they have been in 4 years, heading into the July 4th week. And with the incoming Trump economic boom, the stock market continues to roar back, with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ both hitting record highs. And on this point of an economic boom, I bring to you original correspondence from the President of the United States to our Fed Chair, Jerome Powell. As the president has consistently stated, the American economy is booming. And there were so many economic analysts who said that this president's policies would drive our economy down, when in fact we have seen the opposite. We've seen a massive deregulation campaign take place. We've seen inflation completely diminished from where it was under the reckless spending and the bad policies of the previous incompetent administration. I would remind the Fed Chair, and I would remind the entire world, that this is a president who was a businessman first. And he knows what he is doing. He has a proven economic formula that worked in his first term as president, and it is working again. The one problem that remains is high interest rates for the American people. The American people want to borrow money cheaply, and they should be able to do that. But unfortunately, we have interest rates that are still too high. So the president sent this note to the Fed Chair today. And if you look at this chart, this is a chart of all of the interest rates of many countries throughout the world. At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed Chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies. And we will continue to drive down the cost of living in this country for Americans. We will continue to deregulate. And it's also incredibly important that we pass this one big, beautiful bill, which is the largest tax cuts in American history. And that's why the White House and the president himself have been in touch with lawmakers all weekend long to get this bill passed. And they are working very hard to do so. It remains a top priority for the president. And this bill has exposed the clear differences between Republicans and Democrats in 2025. The Democrats are doubling down on craziness and radical policies that are undermining the very fabric of our country. Just look at the Democrat nominee for New York City Mayor, Zohran Mamdani. He's a Democrat socialist, really a communist, who proudly calls to defund the police, peddles anti-Semitism, praises pro-Hamas groups, wants Israel abolished, and believes wealthy Americans should not exist. Those are his words, just as recent as this weekend. Meanwhile, under President Trump's leadership, Republicans are fighting tirelessly for everyday middle-class working Americans who re-elected this president, and we're carrying out a revolution of common sense, and all of that is packed into this one big, beautiful bill. It delivers the largest middle and working class tax cuts in U.S. history. It keeps America safe by funding the largest ever one-time investment in border security. It's enough to reverse the Biden border invasion. And every single Democrat is against that, against securing our border and deporting millions of criminal illegal aliens. The One Big Beautiful Bill also strengthens and protects Medicaid benefits, despite what Democrats are saying, for eligible American citizens who rely on it, like pregnant women, children, seniors, and people with disabilities, by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse that threaten to destroy this program that was intended for the most vulnerable in our society. And every single Democrat in Congress is against rooting out that waste, fraud, and abuse and blocking the 1.4 million illegal aliens who are currently improperly receiving these benefits that should be going to American tax-paying citizens. The Democrats in Congress are more concerned with defending illegal aliens than they are hardworking Americans. And the Big Beautiful Bill also revitalizes our military and enhances our defense capabilities, protects our country from emerging new threats by funding a cutting-edge missile defense system called the Golden Dome. And as we all know, the One Big Beautiful Bill makes the Trump tax cuts permanent. The White House and the president are adamant that this bill is passed and that this bill makes its way to his desk. Republicans need to stay tough and unified during the home stretch, and we are counting on them to get the job done. So with that, we will take questions. John Fredericks is in our new media seat today. John, thanks for being here. We'll kick it to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Let's get to the One Big Beautiful Bill first. It appears now you're going to get at least 50 votes in the Senate. There'll be some amendments. What is the president's confidence level in getting 218 votes in the House by the end of this week in order for him to sign it on Friday?
Well, look, we are very well aware, the president is very well aware, that this bill needs to not only pass out of the Senate, but it needs to go back to the House, and we need the full weight of the Republican conference to get behind this bill, and we expect them to, and we are confident that they will. The president has been working hand in hand with Senate Majority Leader Thune and also our House Republican leader, or the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, both of whom will be at the White House today to meet with the president yet again. I believe they were here this morning, actually.
I have one follow-up.
Sure.
You outlined Jerome Powell and the note that the president just sent to him. There are many who believe that Powell has been politicized in a lot of different ways. The president has not been shy about acting on things that he believes in. Why not just fire Jerome Powell and put in somebody that is going to lower rates? Why wait?
Well, it's a good question, and one you can ask the president, because that's a decision for him to make. But you're right to point out the politicization of the Fed, and it's very unfortunate for our country. But Jerome Powell cut rates numerous times ahead of the election when Joe Biden was in this Oval Office, but now he refuses to, and the economy is in a much better place. So there really isn't a good explanation for that, and the president is rightfully calling attention to it.
Thank you.
Kelly.
Good afternoon. On Iran, the president posted on his social that he is not even talking to them anymore. When we were at NATO, he said he expected the U.S. and Iran to have talks as early as this week and that he might even want to see a written agreement. What is the update now if he's saying he's not even talking?
So as I told you from the podium last week, I said the administration, and namely our special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been in communication both directly and indirectly with the Iranians. That communication continues. The president himself has not talked to Iran, which he pointed out in his truth statement. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. Does President Trump want Zohran Mamdani deported?
I haven't heard him say that. I haven't heard him call for that. But certainly he does not want this individual to be elected. I was just speaking to him about it and his radical policies that will completely crush New York City, which is obviously a city that the president holds near and dear to his heart.
There's this Congressman, Andy Ogles. He wants the Attorney General Bondi to explore denaturalization proceedings because he thinks Mamdani could have misrepresented or concealed material support for terrorism based on rap lyrics he wrote in 2017. Does President Trump think this is a worthwhile use of the Attorney General's time?
Well, I'll let the president speak to that. I have not seen those claims, but surely if they are true, it's something that should be investigated.
And could President Trump see himself, you said you just talked to him about this, could he see himself working with a mayor, Mamdani, somebody who on Meet the Press this weekend was given 3 chances to condemn the phrase globalize the intifada, but he couldn't?
Yeah, look, the president is always willing to work with everyone. He's working with Democrats across the country, Democrat governors, and he said he'll work with people on the far left. He works with Republicans. He works with people in the middle. He wants to do what's right for America, but surely someone who holds these values and is quite literally a communist and condemns every value that makes this country great. Common sense, law and order, low taxes, working hard, and earning your keep in this country. He's against all of that, and I think the president would find it difficult to work with someone like that. If he is elected, I'm sure you'll hear more from the president on that, but we'll have to see. Hopefully the voters of New York City choose wisely. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president on Friday said that he was hopeful of a Gaza deal within the next week. Can you give us an update on any progress towards that and on any talks that the White House is having with Israel on that?
Sure. Well, I know that Mr. Dermer is in Washington this week to meet with senior officials here at the White House. I also know that this administration is in constant communication with Israeli leadership, and the president himself speaks frequently, as you know, to Prime Minister Netanyahu. But this has been a priority for the president since he took office, to end this brutal war in Gaza. It is because of this president that humanitarian aid is being brought into the region. It's heartbreaking to see the images that have come out from both Israel and Gaza throughout this war, and the president wants to see it end. He wants to save lives. And however, the main priority for the president also remains to bring all of the hostages home out of Gaza. As you know, his tireless effort has brought home many of the hostages, including all of the American hostages who were held there. So he wants to see both things happen, and we're continuing to work very hard to do those things. Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. What is the White House's response to Senator Tillis's criticism articulated from the Senate floor yesterday, in which he said passing the big, beautiful bill would betray President Trump's promise to protect Medicaid?
Well, he is just wrong. And the president and the vast majority of Republicans who are supportive of this legislation are right. This bill protects Medicaid, as I laid out for you, for those who truly deserve this program, the needy, pregnant women, children, sick Americans who physically cannot work. And what it does is it ensures that able-bodied Americans who can work 20 hours a week are actually doing so, and that will therefore strengthen and protect those benefits for Americans who need it, as well as cutting out the waste, fraud, and abuse, as well as getting 1.4 million illegal aliens off of the program. So all of those measures are actually going to protect it for those who need it. That's the president's position, and that's what this bill does, and that's why Republicans need to vote for it and get it to the president's desk.
That kind of criticism from a Republican senator, is that reason for concern for the passage of this?
No, it's not. We're confident this bill is going to be back at the White House by the 4th of July. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. On the New York mayoral race, does the president plan to make an endorsement? And secondly, on Jerome Powell, a lot of the focus obviously has been on interest rates and him keeping them high, but a new controversy erupted today. My colleague first reported that he's facing Chairman Jerome Powell is facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime, about luxurious details of the Fed's $2.5 billion renovation project. Senator Loomis has called attention to this. Some experts want him to be investigated. Does the White House want these allegations investigated and, if found substantiated, punished?
I'll have to take a look at those allegations, and I will raise them to the president's attention and let him speak on them himself. To your first question regarding the mayoral race, the president was asked that yesterday by Maria Bartiromo. He refused to give an endorsement, so you won't get one from me at this podium unless he wants me to do that. Philip, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sure. And then I can go to you.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. The president said that he's working on a temporary pause for immigration enforcement in certain industries. I'm wondering what you can tell us about how he's determining which industries are deserving of a pass. He mentioned farmers, but what about, say, construction workers? I mean, shouldn't there just be one standard here?
I don't have any more details to read out for you, but what I can tell you is that the White House is working closely every day with the Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Homeland Security when it comes to workforce enforcement, worksite enforcement, and the president's focus and the focus of this administration is, of course, to remove public safety threats from the streets and to deport as many of the illegal criminals, especially the violent criminals that we know are still here because of the previous administration. So that's the main priority and the goal.
And then the president has already made cuts to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, but now Senator Tom Cotton has put forward a bill that would cut the office by another 60%. What's the president's reaction to that legislation, and is this something that he would support, those additional cuts?
I don't know if the president's even aware of that legislation, but I will get you a response if he is aware and if he wants to respond to it. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. You mentioned the dangerous wildlife at the Alligator Alcatraz. Is that a design feature? Why is the president going with this mega bill in such precarious position in the Senate? And then also, can you talk about the CBO estimate that it would add about 11 million uninsured?
Well, look, when you have illegal murderers and rapists and heinous criminals in a detention facility surrounded by alligators, yes, I do think that's a deterrent for them to try to escape. We do know that some of these illegal criminals have escaped from other detention facilities, like one in New Jersey, which I know was recently reported on. So, of course, we want to keep the American people safe, and we want to remove these public safety threats from our streets, and we want to effectively detain them as best as we can. As for why the president is going, I think his trip to this detention facility actually underscores the need to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill, because we need more detention facilities across the country. The last administration let in nearly 20 million illegal people from all over the world, and this administration is focused on arresting and detaining them. But in comparison to that 20 million illegal criminal population in our country, we only have 7,000 ICE agents in the interior who are doing this very important work. And so we obviously need more personnel, we need more resources, and that's why we need to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill.
On the CBO's
Go ahead. Yes, in the pink.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can you please share some details of China trade deal? Has the U.S. agreed to ease some export technology export restrictions?
Sure. Well, the final language that was agreed upon in both Geneva and in London was signed just past week. We can get you that final text of the agreement. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline.
Eamon, and then behind you.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. So on Jay Powell, has the president got a short list of who he wants to see as Jay Powell's successor, and is he going to name a successor as early as this summer?
I won't get ahead of the president on any announcements on that.
Does he like Scott Bessent for the job?
Again, I won't get ahead of the president.
And on TikTok, if you could, real quick, he said yesterday he's got a buyer, but the question there is, does he have a seller? And do you have any indication from the Chinese government that they've authorized a sale of TikTok to the U.S. or to U.S. buyers?
What I can tell you is that these discussions with China regarding the sale of TikTok have been ongoing at the highest level, and they will continue. As you know, we have another 90-day extension, and it's just to continue to work out this deal and make sure that TikTok stays on for the American people. That's the president's main goal in this, while protecting their privacy and their security. Behind you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. The president has been calling for a deal in Gaza for 2 days and many posts. Who is blocking the deal? And one other thing, when he posted on Netanyahu's trial, also he said it interferes with the negotiations on Iran and on Gaza. What did he mean by that?
I'm sorry, to your second question?
The second question, when he posted about the Israeli Prime Minister trial, he said it interferes with the negotiations on Gaza and on Iran. What did he mean by that?
It interferes because it physically and logistically was interfering. The prime minister was slated to go to court last week when he's in the middle of negotiating a peace deal and bringing hostages out of a war-torn region. And so the president was simply, I think, emphasizing his empathy that he has for Bibi Netanyahu and seeing him go what he's going through with his own judicial system in the state of Israel. Clearly, the president knows that very well. He, too, was a victim of a judicial system that was trying to put him in jail, as you all know. You all covered it, but President Trump prevailed. That's why he's back in the Oval Office, and he believes that Bibi Netanyahu is a great leader for the people of Israel. The president just worked with him closely to end that 12-day war and to obliterate Iran's nuclear facility, to take out that imminent threat, not just to the state of Israel, but also to the United States of America and the rest of the world. And he believes that Prime Minister Netanyahu should be praised for that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On the mega bill and the amendment that would limit Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, does the president want that amendment to pass?
The president wants this bill to pass. Meredith.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. On trade, we have this looming July 9th deadline coming up. We heard the Treasury Secretary say that he expects to wrap up these trade deals by Labor Day, but when President Trump was asked yesterday about any extensions by July 9th, he said, I think that would be necessary. So is the president ruling out any extensions on trade for any nations, even if they're negotiating in good faith?
Well, you heard from him directly. He said he did not think that it would be necessary. He is going to set the rates for many of these countries if they don't come to the table to negotiate in good faith. And he is meeting with his trade team this week to do that. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. I just watched a CNN segment on a new app called ICE Block, and it kind of appeared to be promoting this app where you can tell people where ICE agents are. Given the recent rise...
An app that tells people where ICE agents are?
Yes. And given the rise, I believe, 500% increase in assaults on ICE agents, I wanted to see if you could comment on that and why CNN would be promoting such an app.
Well, it's a very good question. I'll have to go back and watch the clip myself, but surely it sounds like this would be an incitement of further violence against our ICE officers. As you know, as you stated, there's been a 500% increase in violence against ICE agents, law enforcement officers across the country who are just simply trying to do their jobs and remove public safety threats from our communities. And that's something we as Americans, including journalists at CNN who live in many of these cities where illegal aliens are hiding and were let in from the previous administration, should be very grateful for. So we haven't seen the clip. We'll take a look at it, but certainly it's unacceptable that a major network would promote such an app that is encouraging violence against law enforcement officers who are trying to keep our country safe.
Caroline.
Shelby.
I just wanted to get a clarification on the Senator Rick Scott's amendment. It sounds like the president is agnostic about whether it's attached. Is that accurate?
Look, I'm not going to get into the details of the discussions that are ongoing right now, but the president wants these senators to come to a conclusion, to get this bill back to the White House as soon as possible and make sure that it's a piece of legislation that can make its way back through the House as well. So obviously there's some ping-ponging between both sides of Capitol Hill right now, but that's why Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson are working with the president in lockstep every step of the way. In the back, News Nation, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. The president did
and then in front of you, yes.
In front of
Sure, I'll take both of you.
The president did announce last week that the trade deal with India is closed, and this could happen anytime soon. Are there any roadblocks as of now? Are there any updates on that? And how does the president see this about China's role or its influence in the Indo-Pacific region?
Sure, yes. The president said that last week, and it remains true. I actually just spoke to our Secretary of Commerce about it. He was in the Oval Office with the president. They are finalizing these agreements, and you'll hear from the president and his team, his trade team, very soon when it comes to India.
And on China? How do we counter China on that front?
Yes, I mean, look, India remains a very strategic ally in the Asia Pacific, and the president has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Modi, as you know, and he will continue to have that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. On the reconciliation bill, Senator Tillis from the floor yesterday seemed to suggest President Trump was getting bad counsel on the effects of the bill. Is President Trump aware of the analyses, and there are several of these, that suggest if rural hospitals potentially close, if there are Medicaid patients in the millions that become ineligible for that?
Yes, and that claim is just simply untrue. Rural hospitals comprise 7% of all hospital spending on Medicaid, and that illustrates that they have not benefited from the massive increase of waste, fraud, and abuse under the Biden administration. So this bill strengthens Medicaid. It will protect those benefits that hardworking Americans need, and that's why the president wants this bill to pass. The senator was wrong. The president put out a Truth Social post addressing it, and then the senator announced he's no longer running for office anymore. So I think that case has been closed, and the White House is continuing to focus on getting this legislation to the president's desk for his signature. Go ahead. Yes, you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, you and then you. There's confusion here.
A question on Syria.
Go ahead.
Has the Syrian government get back to you that they are ready to join the Abraham Accord? Is there any discussion with the Syrian and Israeli government for having a security agreement? Is the first question. And the second question, what's the end goal for talking with the Iranian? Is that only focused on the nuclear program, or they are willing to speak about the other issues like the proxy groups and ballistic missiles, or even trade with Iran?
So as for discussions between Syria and Israel, you'll have to reach out to those respective governments. I can't comment on that. But what I can tell you is that this afternoon, the president will be signing an executive order to terminate the United States sanctions program on Syria. And this is in an effort to promote and support the country's path to stability and peace. The order will remove sanctions on Syria while maintaining sanctions on the former President Assad, his associates, human rights abusers, drug traffickers, persons linked to chemical weapons activities, ISIS and their affiliates, and Iranian proxies. And this is, again, an action that the president promised and shocked the world with in Saudi Arabia, because he's committed to supporting a Syria that is stable, unified, and at peace with itself and its neighbors. The president met with Syria's new president when we were in the Middle East, as you know, and so this is another promise made and promise kept by this president to promote peace and stability in the region.
Go ahead,
Caroline.
Sure. Questions on two topics, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I will start with NTD here. First, on Canada. Canada says it's now dropping its digital services tax on American tech companies days after President Trump says he's halting all trade talks with Canada. First, what's the president's reaction to this? Can you tell us more about his call with Prime Minister Carney over the weekend? How did he get Carney to drop it? And also, what's the impact on American tech companies given this latest progress, as the president says he has been fighting for American tech companies?
It's very simple. Prime Minister Carney in Canada caved to President Trump in the United States of America. And President Trump knows how to negotiate, and he knows that he is governing the best country and the best economy in this world, on this planet. And every country on the planet needs to have good trade relationships with the United States. And it was a mistake for Canada to vow to implement that tax that would have hurt our tech companies here in the United States. The president made his position quite clear to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister called the president last night to let the president know that he would be dropping that tax, which is a big victory for our tech companies and our American workers here at home.
And on Harvard, if you don't mind, the administration today formally accused Harvard of violating civil rights laws by not doing enough to fight anti-Semitism. We know that the president has talked to us before about Harvard potentially having a deal with the administration in the coming days. Do you have an updated timeline for that? How is the negotiations going? And is more pressure needed for Harvard to take fighting anti-Semitism seriously?
Well, there was quite a direct letter that was sent to Harvard this morning, as you know. The negotiations are taking place behind closed doors, so I won't comment on that. But what I will share with all of you, for those who haven't seen it, is the context of this letter, because I think it's very important. And this comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, which concluded after a thorough investigation that Harvard University is in a violent violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. And if you read some of the content of the investigation and what they found, the majority of Jewish students reportedly experienced negative bias or discrimination on their campus, while a quarter of Jewish students at Harvard felt physically unsafe. Jewish and Israeli students were assaulted and spit on. They hid their kippahs for fear of being harassed and concealed their Jewish identity from classmates for fear of ostracization. Images were widely circulated amongst the Harvard community that trafficked in obvious anti-Semitic tropes, including one that showed a dollar sign inside of a Star of David, and the campus was vandalized with anti-Semitic stickers, including one that showed the Israeli flag with a swastika. The Harvard campus was racked by demonstrations, as you all know, violent protests that violated the university's rules of conduct. The demonstrations called for genocide and murder, denied Jewish and Israeli students access to campus spaces. These are all facts that Harvard cannot dispute, and that's why the administration has found them in violation of Title VI and has threatened to withhold their federal funding, because if you break federal law, you should not be receiving federal tax dollars. And so I rest my case on Harvard. Andrea.
Yeah, so President Macron of France earlier today said that tariffs levied by powerful countries are often a form of blackmail, and criticized the sort of process that's underway. He didn't mention the United States specifically, but said that these tariffs are really hurting developing countries. So there's this big UN conference going on. What do you say to that? What is the president, was he aware of that comment, and did he have any response?
I think the president and the White House would certainly reject that characterization by Prime Minister Macron. Tariffs are an effective use of presidential power to bring back the middle class, to bring back our manufacturing industry, which was the backbone of our American economy and has been hollowed out by globalist politicians who have caved to foreign countries instead of doing what's right for American workers. That's why the president is effectively utilizing his authority to wage tariffs and to utilize tariffs, and continues to be in discussions and negotiations on trade to do what's right for America. And Europe and the rest of the world might not be used to that, but President Trump is back in town, and he's going to do what's right for our people and our country.
Can I just follow up on Netanyahu? So there's a report in Israeli media that the Prime Minister will actually be here, that Netanyahu will be here today meeting with the President. Can you confirm that?
I don't believe Prime Minister Netanyahu is here today. I think you guys would know about that by now. Unless there's something going on I don't know about, but I don't believe he is. I do know he has expressed interest in coming to Washington and meeting with the President, and we are working on a date for that. I do not believe it is today, but that would be fun. You never know in this White House, let's be honest. Go ahead.
Thanks, Carolyn. Does the President support this new measure in the big, beautiful bill that would impose steep new taxes on new wind and solar projects?
I believe you're referring to the credits for wind and solar projects.
No, and we're talking about the new tax. There's a new tax that it's estimated would add 10 to 20% to the cost of any new wind and solar projects that start after this year.
Again, I don't want to comment on the specifics of provisions, but I'm sure the president will speak on that directly. Again, this is an ongoing process. The president continues to be very much engaged with the leadership in both the Senate and the House to get this bill back to his desk.
Did the president ask for that provision? Because the National Building Trades Union is saying that it's the equivalent of terminating more than 1,000 Keystone XL pipeline projects. Is that something that would concern him?
Well, the president spoke on this yesterday in his interview, and he said he understands that legislators want to protect jobs in their communities and in their districts. And so he understands why some of them are against this provision, but he also understands why people want the provision. So again, this is an ongoing deliberation and discussion, and the president is engaged in this very much. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. We've been hearing from White House officials for weeks that you're close on trade deals with a number of countries. Can we get any update on which countries will have deals by the 9th and when there may be any announcements?
I'll let the president and the trade team speak on it.
Can you respond to the CBO estimate that the Senate bill would increase the deficit by nearly $3.3 trillion?
This is one of the most fiscally conservative pieces of legislation that has ever made its way through Capitol Hill. There's $2 trillion in mandatory savings in this bill, and not only that, the projected growth that this bill will bring to our economy. It will be an economic boom. The Council of Economic Advisors has an analysis that shows that the bill will generate $4.1 trillion in economic growth, and it will cut taxes, putting more money back into the American people's pockets. That's why this president wants this bill to pass, and I know he's busy working the phones and doing what he needs to do today to make it happen. So we'll see you all later. Thank you. We'll see you in Florida tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, so that was White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt offering up the first White House news briefing of the week. A lot of issues talked about. She, of course, addressed the issue of the economy, talking about the various situations going on between Canada dropping some of its tariff threats against the United States. She also talked a lot about President Trump and a conversation that he recently had with Jerome Powell. Here's part of that.
The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies.
Caroline Leavitt also touting a number of wins and victories that the Trump administration, specifically President Trump, celebrated last week. Tomorrow, she also laid out that the president is going to be going back to Florida for the unveiling or the opening of a new center called Alligator Alcatraz. Here's how she described it.
The facility is in the heart of the Everglades and will be informally known as Alligator Alcatraz. There is only one road leading in, and the only way out is a one-way flight. It is isolated and surrounded by dangerous wildlife and unforgiving terrain. The facility will have up to 5,000 beds to house, process, and deport criminal illegal aliens.
Alligator Alcatraz, again, will be a detention facility for illegal immigrants there in Florida. That's a quick check of your headlines and your news break. Now, let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show.